2023 was a pretty amazing year for gaming. We got Baldur's Gate 3, Tears of the Kingdom, Jedi Survivor, and a ton of other titles I'm sure you guys are going to tell me all about in the comment section below. And 2024 is shaping up to be just as an amazing of a year, especially for those of you who are science fiction fans like me. And so in this video, I wanted to give you guys an introduction to 10 games that I'm looking forward to in that science fiction genre, plus 2 that don't really fit, but I thought were worth mentioning anyway since I'm really excited about them. My favorite franchise, despite some of the more recent movies, is still Star Wars.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
And that's why I'm very easily excited about Star Wars Outlaws, which is set to be an open world title, which they say is the first one ever, but that's not exactly true. It's actually been a really long time since I've played an open world expansive Star Wars game. The last one was Star Wars Galaxies for me, and that's around 20 years ago now.
If I want to survive, I have to play their game.
Star Wars Outlaws then looks to be centered around a specific Lady Han Solo-esque character before the fall of the Empire, so we still have to deal with some Empire baddies. Interestingly, the main character doesn't look like they have any kind of Force-sensitive abilities from the previews, so they're not going to be wielding anything like lightsabers or Force powers, which is a bit of a risk from, I'm sure, their perspective, as a lot of people are probably looking for more, I don't know, Star Wars-esque feeling games with lightsaber-wielding heroes.
Hello there.
But I like that they're taking a risk on this, and I'm excited to see what they do with it. Oh, besides, we've already got Jedi Fallen Order, and they're already going to be doing a 3rd game now, so we've got that to look forward to. The gameplay looks to be in 3rd person, with shooter and stealth elements, so looking at the formula, it seems to be pretty similar to Fallen Order in the way it's an over-the-shoulder shooter. Again, I'm really down for that, and the plot looks to be also a bit smaller scale than some of the other games. It seems to be centered around some kind of heist that the character is supposed to go through, but I'm sure it's going to branch off into a bigger story that has larger implications, as most Star Wars games tend to do. Open world, though, is kind of a difficult thing to define, and I'm not currently set or convinced that it's going to be as open as maybe they're trying to hint at least from what we've seen from the previews, it looks like we're going to go from ground to space pretty seamlessly, but I suspect that there's a hidden loading screen in between with 2 different play spaces like more traditional games. After all, they probably don't have an infinite budget like some other games do that I cover.
Hello, I like money.
So I wouldn't go into this game expecting full-scale planets, but I still expect to see a pretty exciting experience, which is why I'm still looking forward to it. And I can't wait to get my hands on it to let you guys know all about whether or not it lives up to expectations and if it's worth picking up for yourself.
My craft is death.
Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2. Now I've got a bit of a confession to make here, guys. In the recent year, I've gone through a ton of the 40k books based around the Horus Heresy and a few other parts of the galaxy, and I gotta say I'm a huge fan now of this crazy, bloody universe, and I'm super excited that there's a game coming out in it based around a Space Marine. If you don't know what Space Marines are, they're these big, badass, superhuman guys who are bred to just kill heretics and Xenos. And, well, it's a pretty dark thing, you'd have to look more into it. But anyway, it looks like it's going to be a pretty fun hack and slash. You get to play Captain Titus, who's got a bolter in one hand, a chainsword in the other, and I'm sure it's going to be a lot of fun. It does look to have a story, though, that's going to be based around probably something to do with how he was turned into the Inquisition by a battle brother from the first game, and now he's fighting the Tyranids in the 4th Tyranid War. And this game also takes place in M42, which is the most current time for Warhammer, apparently, so this is long after the Horus Heresy. Well, I guess we'll just have to find out where this story goes. It looks interesting, and I'm really excited to find out about it, so look for that on the channel.
For the Emperor!
The next one's a pretty big one, though. Homeworld 3, set to release on March 8th, is a follow-up to the highly anticipated series of games that defined the genre of 3D RTS space games. This new campaign looks to be set 100 years following the disappearance of Fleet Command, aka Karen Sajet, who was the protagonist of the earlier games. The story looks to be centered around unraveling why she disappeared while she was investigating a new scourge called the Anomaly, which is spreading across the galaxy, darkening entire star systems. The new protagonist, heir and successor, Imogen Sujet, who you play, has a brand new set of fleet ships and a mothership ready for you to command, which is horizontal, at least in the previews, but can be made vertical from what we found, so that'll please a lot of people who love the original vertical ships from the original game. It looks to be a continuation rather than a reinvention of previous game mechanics. Of course though, as you might expect, there's going to be a variety of new ships and maps and locations to visit, as well as some new mechanics to leverage. One such new mechanic is a new artifact mechanic, which enables you to specialize into some more unique abilities. This reminds me a bit of Deserts of Karak actually, the ground-based prequel to the Homeworld series, which came out some years back, which I actually really enjoyed. There are some new game modes as well, such as a co-op mode that pits 3 players against some AI called War Games, where you go through a series of missions which might have some light story to it. Though you only get carriers in this gameplay mission, which makes it a little bit more challenging than the base game. Of course though, there will also be a multiplayer element, as we've been informed, so you can look forward to that as well. Visually, of course, the game looks to be absolutely stunning and a great follow-up to the very colorful and visually stunning spacescapes that we've come to expect from Homeworld, so there's a lot to look forward to there. Either way, the game is high on my list and I'm looking forward to it this year. It looks to be again available on March 8th and will sell for around $60 on Steam. Stalker 2: Heart of Chernobyl was originally set to release back in 2023, but sadly due to real-world circumstances, like the war in Ukraine, now though they've gotten back into the studio and they're safe and they're looking to actually publish it, so good on them for doing that during all that danger. Stay safe out there, by the way. Stalker, if you don't know, has become a bit of a cult classic. It's a horror survival shooter, and it's loved for its really realistic, creepy environments and horrifyingly disfigured enemies, which is set in the famed real-world setting of Chernobyl.
50,000 people used to live here. Now it's a ghost town.
This follow-up then is a series that takes place after the first game, after a second bomb was detonated, which will make the place a bit different than you'll remember from the earlier games. There's also a new protagonist who we don't know much about other than they've been dropped into the zone against their will, but I suspect that this mystery is going to be part of the plot. Notably, the game is also visually stunning, and based on what we've seen, they look to be using some new contemporary methods of photogrammetry and probably ray trace lighting to make it look really darn near photorealistic in a lot of these shots. No matter how they're doing it though, it's easily going to be one of the best looking games of 2024, and I cannot wait to give this game a try. Stalker 2 looks to be coming out on September 5th, but remember that things can change, so that date might change depending on how dangerous it gets in Ukraine. Freedom, peace, democracy. Helldivers 2 looks to be a parody of the Starship Troopers series of movies, or at least the books, and it's a squad-based shooter where you're pitted against a bunch of aliens or actual AI robots in the game, to bring peace and freedom to the galaxy, whether they like it or not.
Free. No! Sweet liberty! No! Look familiar?
It will feature a multiplayer as well as co-op elements, so you'll be able to play with friends or with AI if you prefer not to have friends, and will be a great way to just throw away some time with some mindless fun pew-pew. The game looks to be available on PC as well as on PlayStation, and I'm looking forward to this because it looks like just a lot of fun to just do a Friday night with a couple of friends. So I'll be checking out Helldivers 2 on February 8th when it releases on Steam. You'll be able to find it there for $39.99 pre-purchase right now, or you can just wait till it comes out and see the reviews say about the game. Next though is one that you guys probably will know about if you follow my channel. It's Squadron 42. Now this game was just announced as feature complete back at the end of 2023, and that means that they're probably looking to release it in sometime 2024, or at least to announce it in sometime this year. If you didn't know, Squadron 42 is the spiritual successor to the Wing Commander series, which brings together a lot of the game elements that Chris Roberts, the original creator, originally wanted to bring to his game, pulling off a lot of the technological feats that weren't possible back when he created the originals. He's even brought back some of the original people from those movies and games, Mark Hamill and John Rhys Davies, who play protagonists yet again in very similar roles to the Wing Commander series. The game's plot then will center around the life of an up-and-coming pilot in the United Empire of Earth's Navy, who is part of a detachment investigating some criminal activities in the Odin system. Based on a number of previews though, it looks like there will be a larger plot revolving around the Vandul race, which are a hostile race of aliens which want to see the extermination of all humans and all other species everywhere, that I suspect will tie into the other 2 parts that they have planned. Yes, they have 2 other parts planned, and they've already gone through 10 years of development. Now, that being said, it looks like those 10 years have paid off. They've got their tools now, and they'll probably be able to pump out those other 2 episodes pretty quickly, but let's just see how the first one goes. I'm pretty excited for it. It's visually very stunning from what we've seen, and the gameplay looks to be really in-depth. It really looks like they're trying to deliver this kind of carrier immersive experience, like you're actually in this fleet sometime in the distant future. So check it out on my channel when it comes out. I will definitely be covering this game closely. You can bet on it. And since we're already on the topic of Star Citizen, might as well talk about Star Citizen 4.0 and Pyro, which are coming out sometime this year. Now, if you don't know, this is a really big update for the game. It's actually going to introduce server meshing and a brand new star system, the first ever since we've gotten Stanton, actually. So it promises to be quite an anticipated patch with a big change to the game, hopefully a lot more players and some more gameplay. Also, since Squadron 42 has gone into feature complete status, there's a lot of teams moving back from Squadron 42 to Star Citizen, so there's a lot of talk of them getting a lot more done this year than they've done in previous years because they just got more people working on it. If you like top-down city builders with strategy behind it, but with a survival twist, then you might just like Frostpunk 2. Now, Frostpunk 2 is the installation that's coming after the first game, Frostpunk, as you would expect, which takes place in an alternate reality starting from 1886, where the climate of Earth changed drastically, dropping most of it into a deep freeze, killing pretty much mostly everyone. The origin of this isn't exactly clear from the story, but we can kind of guess from what we pieced together in the story that had something to do with the sun dimming due to solar dust, or maybe even dust from a volcanic eruption, maybe Krakatoa, which happened around that time in our current history. And the way that people are surviving is through some good old-fashioned Victorian-era steampunk technology, namely a gigantic furnace which consumes massive amounts of coal, and you got to keep it kind of filled up in order to survive. Now, in the first game, you were primarily focused on weathering the worst part of the freeze, shepherding the last of humanity and discovering outcrops and trying to figure out what happened to the Earth. You're tasked with providing the inhabitants with shelter, food, and warmth, along with some semblance of civilization so you can maintain order. And actually, the most important part of the game is maintaining order. That's really what you're balancing aside from just surviving. And the decisions you have to make become progressively harder and harder as you progress through the campaign. You go from making simple decisions as to where to place homes and what kind of food to get, to things like whether or not you should put children to work or sacrifice swaths of your population. It can get really, really dark, and there are a lot of different paths you can choose to go down depending on your preference. You can go down the dark totalitarian path, or you can try religion. There's some really cool options in here. Now, the newest game takes place 30 years after that initial freeze, where the worst of it is now over, and the focus of humanity is now to try to come out of the freeze and restart civilization. So you play a steward that's got to lead humanity back from the brink of extinction. Now, there's no current date for release, but they said the first half of 2024, hopefully before winter ends. It seems like it would make a lot of sense, and I'm really looking forward to this because I very much enjoyed the first game. There are a lot of games on this list made by really big publishers, but the next one is made by a smaller, more independent studio. I mean, smaller than like CIG, which makes Star Citizen, and they're technically independent, but they're also technically huge. Now, this game is a horror game that takes place on an abandoned moon facility where you have to navigate kind of liminal looking spaces that give kind of a backrooms feel, while it's populated by hostile, scary inhabitants in order to unravel the mystery and just survive. Now, the point of this game is to avoid the dangers, something like Alien Isolation or the Insomnia horror series if you've played it before. It seems at least it's going to be a lot of fun and a good scare if you're into that sort of thing like I am, and the soundtrack is apparently being composed by a well-known composer by the name of Mick Gordon, who did 2016 Doom's soundtrack, so he's sure to bring some good level of immersion to the experience. You can check up on Routine on Steam if you're curious, where it's currently anticipated to release sometime in 2024 with no current available pre-purchase. The last major one on this list is Dune Awakening. Now, there's no official release date for this game this year, but because the movie 2 is coming out this year, I very much suspect that we're going to get some kind of announcement this year about where it is and when it is planned to release. I mean, it'd be cool if we release it this year, or they release it this year, but can't be sure. Now, why I love it is because it is the godfather of science fiction. If you're really into it, you'll know that it inspired really famous movies like Star Wars. In fact, Tatooine was inspired by Arrakis, along with the Sand People and the Sarlacc Pit. There's a lot of parallels. Frank Herbert's book is pure genius, and if you've not read it, I highly recommend it. So while there isn't a release date, we do know some information about what to expect. It is planned to be a massively multiplayer online RPG where you play just a random dude on Arrakis trying to survive. It's going to be open world, there's going to be PvP as well as PvE, and apparently some base building. And since I know Arrakis pretty well from the books, I'm sure the very harsh environment along with the sandworms are going to play a pretty big role in you actually surviving, so make sure you walk without rhythm lest you call Shai-Hulud upon yourself. Man, those books are good. The last two on this list are not games that are technically science fiction, but I'm looking forward to them nonetheless, and I wanted to add them in here quickly at the end. The first one is Manor Lords, was just coming out on April 26th. It is an independently developed game by one guy, and it looks incredible. He's done a ton of research into medieval architecture and city planning, and has spent a ton of time making the game look good, as well as play in a really interesting way that's different than other city builders I've played. The sort of free-form way that you can make city blocks and stuff is really interesting, and I can't wait to see what the more finished product includes.
That is your destiny.
Black Myth is also coming out. Black Myth is based around the myth of Wukong, which is a really famous Chinese myth, and it's coming around August 20th. We know that it's going to be a kind of combat game, a roguelike sort of experience, maybe something similar to Dark Souls. I can't tell for sure, but it looks absolutely incredible. In terms of being visually stunning, it might be one of the most visually stunning games on the list, so I can't wait to check that out myself. But what do you guys think? What games are you looking forward to in 2024? What games on this list are you guys excited about? Let me know down in the comment section below. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next one.